We started seeing Bob Thompson with various nuggets, information, and insight about television and TV deals. He lived it. He was a part of it. He was right in the middle of it at Fox Sports, and he joins us, and he has numerous times. We appreciate his access on 365 Sports. Bob, thanks for your time. Before we get into any of that, how was the cruise?
First of all, it's great to be back with you guys. The cruise was great. I'd been delayed for 2 years and had a nice time, a couple weeks on a boat and a few days front end and back end. And, did some Spain and Portugal, a little bit of France. It was very nice, but it's always good to be back in the U.S.
And then now welcome back to reality, as I told you in a text last night, and you giggled on that.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is I get to start playing golf tomorrow. So I've got that going for me.
Oh, that's right. You had the injury to come back from. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So a week ago or so, Brett Yormark mentioned at Big 12 basketball media days about he thought that within a couple of weeks that there would be news about an extension. And then he was in Waco on, Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, and I sat down with him, and it didn't seem like it was quite as positive, not positive, but it wasn't quite as emphatic. Mack Rhodes thinks it's still somewhat imminent, this extension or whatever you want to call it. What are your thoughts about what you heard?
Well, I listened to both, the comments from a couple of weeks ago and then your conversation with him. And it seemed to me he kind of walked it back a little bit. The one thing that really stuck out to me was that they had not had any discussions on term, really. He mentioned that. And that's a little surprising to me because, there's only a few things that really matter, and that's signing bonus, term, and annual rights fees. And it's really hard to get to either of the two money issues if you don't know how long the deal's going to be. And so that's when I really kind of start thinking that they're not as close as maybe some people have made it out to be. When you heard the words imminent being used and things like that. And, to me, imminent is like, in a couple of days. And I just don't think they're anywhere near that close, nor do they have to be. He's got 16 months until the actual exclusive negotiating period begins. So I don't see what the big rush is other than, if they want to show some numbers to some other schools outside of the conference to see if, somebody might nibble.
Bob, when he said, a couple weeks, could he have been in a meeting and said, oh, well, heard just some things and gone, well, this could go fast? Because can't these things go fast when you hit on agreeable terms pretty early?
Yes, they can. They can move quick. And if it's just an extension, which this could technically be because you're talking to your existing two partners, that can help speed up the process. The one thing, though, that I caution on that is that this is like a 12-year-old deal, and there's a lot of things have changed in these 12 years, and a lot of things they're going to want to cover going forward. So to just do a straight extension and just add some years and add some dollars, I don't think they're going to do that. And I also don't think they would have gone out and hired Endeavor as their agency to market their media rights if they were just going to do an extension. Endeavor's the two ladies that run their sports practice on the media side. One worked for me for a number of years, and the other one I've done a lot of deals with. And they're very, very good. And they're not going to just tack on a few years and add some dollars without covering all these other issues that need to be contained in a new agreement.
So, Bob, I know it's ruffled feathers for folks that aren't Big 12 fans per se to see Yormark coming out and saying this and that. And you kind of touched on it there as far as maybe enticing or getting the attention of some other schools. Besides that, what would be the point of going out publicly and saying things like he's saying of, a deal might be imminent or what have you? Because the people he's talking to, they know what's what. So what's kind of the mindset behind doing that?
I guess he'd really like to have something to show, a nice hit in his first 60 days or 90 days or whatever he is. And that would certainly be one. I think it sends a message to the rest of the college football world that, as he stated, the Big 12 is open for business. And not only are they open for business, they're doing business. And, he's made some comments about potential expansion west. He's hired, a number of ad agencies to try and help, create a better message for the conference going forward. I think what he's really trying to do is really put out the impression there, which I think is very smart, that we're moving forward. It's full steam ahead. We've got a job to do, and we're doing it.
He mentioned that it would be good and will show stability, which obviously both the Big 12 and the Pac-12 want that, need that, and would love that. Would that make a difference if this is only like 3 years or whatever the number would be, even with more money? Does that give them enough stability, especially in this time when we've seen so much uproar in the last year or two?
I think stability is important. I think certainly right now, in my mind, that the Big 12 is more stable than the Pac-12. Pac-12, I've maintained all along, needs to get a deal done, sooner rather than later. And I understand they're supposedly close, but, they've heard that for a while. I think for the Big 12 having the deal done, it does a couple of things. Number one, they're locked in. They're going to be locked in with, ESPN and Fox if it gets done now. And, ESPN Plus will be continue with the third tier package. So they have a streaming element. They have, broadcast network. They have the linear cable network. And it's very similar to, a Big Ten deal, other than the money's not quite there and they got one less network. Other than that, they're going to get great windows. And he's got the BYU window so the networks can get 8 Mountain, 7 Pacific windows out of a few home games there. Obviously, BYU's not going to want to play all their home games at night. It gets a little cold there in that part of the country a little later in the year. So, but I think it would show some stability and again, show that conference is moving forward as a plan, got a TV deal. My guess is it's going to be a 5-year deal. That they're going to want to go to market again before the Big Ten does and the SEC does. Possible that they go a year after, but I don't know. I would think for both the Pac-12 and the Big 12, it might be smart to go a year short and maybe be negotiating for 2009 as opposed to 2030 when the Big Ten's up again.
Do you think that, particularly because the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are so linked now because of what the Big Ten did to them and poaching their two LA schools from them, would make it difficult if you were negotiating with the Pac-12 right now? Would you feel across the room that maybe not all 10 of those schools are really all in this right now, knowing that they may have to do something else or have the opportunity to do something else within the terms of even a very short contract?
Yeah, if I was negotiating, I'd certainly want to have a look at the grant of rights before I signed any, television deal. Make sure that everybody's solid, at least for the term of the TV deal, and that there's no, easy out. The other thing would be, it's hard to say. I think for the conference, I don't think they're going to hold any grudges. Personally, I don't think that Fox is going to be involved. So the fact that USC and UCLA are gone, they're not going to be able to pin that on anybody. Because I really would be surprised. I think Fox is happy with the USC, UCLA for their West Coast. They've got the Mountain West Conference. That who knows what's going to happen with San Diego State. But you've got some other schools out there that can fill that late night 7:30 Pacific window that usually just airs on FS1 anyways, and so not a big deal for the Fox broadcast network. I think, that's kind of, I wouldn't worry about it too much. But if I'm buying, I'd certainly want to see that grant of rights because there's without a doubt, and they'd be smart. I mean, they'd be foolish if they hadn't. Every school in the Pac-12 has had to have taken a look around and made some other, inquiries or plans. I mean, just as a prudent business person, that's something you have to do when your future is potentially thrown into peril.
Bob, with these shorter-term deals that the Big 12 might be signing or potentially the Pac-12 as well, how short do you go? I mean, what is it feasible? Is it like a 3 years and then turn right around and go back to market? Kind of how does all that work?
I'd be surprised if they were less than 5.
Okay.
The broadcast networks want and the television partners, broadcast, cable, whatever, streaming, they want some level of certainty. You got to remember that the way these deals work, especially if there's a signing bonus or some upfront money, the they tend to have an revenue accelerator over the course, 3 to 4% per year. But the networks, by and large, make more of their money on the back end because they can raise their prices maybe a little bit more along the way than what they're raising the increases on a year-to-year basis to the schools and the conference. So, 5 years, I think, would be the minimum. I don't think anybody wants to do 12 and 13-year deals. I don't think the conferences should, and I don't think the networks, while they might want to, I don't think they have to. For years, the deals were a lot shorter. And then all of a sudden there was this round where stuff was 12 and 13 years. I mean, even the NFL deal is 10 years. And but given the way TV is changing, and we're kind of at this inflection point where, is it who's going to win the battle? Streaming, the bundle, back and forth. Hard to say, but if you go much longer than 5 years, you could miss something. You could miss that point where there's a flip, and you're going to be on the wrong side of the flip.
You mentioned the Pac-12 getting closer. That's what you've heard, and we're not sure yet what that is, and hopefully for them it all works out as well. Or you feel like they're going to end up relying on streaming heavier than maybe the other conferences?
Yes, I do. I think that I don't know necessarily that it's going to be for their top games. I think they'll still want to put those on, ESPN/ABC. But I think for, the next level down, and if I'm correct that Fox is not going to be bidding, they might be bidding, but they're not going to bid hard on the Pac-12. I would guess that a streaming partner would be next. And I think that would be good for the Pac-12. I think, West Coast, all those entities, be it Apple, Google, Amazon, they're all located out there. People are pretty comfortable with that kind of concept out there. And it's probably not a bad fallback for the conference. So, the tough thing, though, for them is, I think they can get close to a deal here pretty soon. It might take a little longer because it's not like what may happen in the Big 12, where it's the same existing, incumbents in Fox and ESPN. You bring a new entity into it, and maybe an entity that's buying more bulk than ESPN is. The contract becomes a lot more things have to be negotiated in terms of dollars, selection rights, selection process, all those types of things, which are the nitty gritties when you have a new agreement. If it's just a renewal, most of that stuff's pretty well laid out, and it's just really dollars and length.
Bob, you said that they would be comfortable out there with that kind of programming or that kind of service. Is that kind of saying that, West Coasters may be a little bit more in tune with Apple TV, Amazon streaming, as opposed to, and look, every time a game is on streaming here, we get a lot of questions from people who are older, who are not into that, about how do I get it? How do I subscribe? That there wouldn't be as much consternation among the fan base about how to actually tune in and watch?
I think that's part of it. The thing that the Amazon NFL games has shown is that, they're drawing decent numbers. They're also drawing a younger audience. So that, also goes to the fact that the younger people tend to know how to, navigate these streaming things better. Those companies are all very, very, well known on that part of the country because, like I said, they're all located there. But the one thing you have to be concerned about, in my mind, with Amazon is, okay, so let's say it's a 3:30 window, which is 12:30 Pacific, so a 3:30 Eastern window. You've got like 5 other games on at that time, right? Fox has got a couple between their outlets, and ESPN's got a few, and there's an ABC game, there's a CBS game. And now all of a sudden there's going to, if there's an Amazon game, you got to leave your bundle where you can flip back and forth at the touch of a button. So all those different games, and, all us sports people are horrific channel surfers. You got to bust out of your bundle or your DirecTV package or your cable package, go into the Amazon app, find the game, etc. And then you're stuck there unless you leave and go back to the bundle again. And so that's one thing that kind of scares me a little bit, as opposed to on Thursday night, they're the only game on. And people will go there and they'll just sit on that game because there's really nothing else to watch. Maybe there's one other college game. But so they'll just sit on that game, and that's fine. But when there's all these other games going on at the same time, as the Amazon game, that becomes a little problematic to me as far as, they're not going to get people who are just breezing through the games and decide to hit on it and stay on it. You're going to have to want it. You got to go there to get that game. And then you can't really go anywhere else unless you leave that platform and go back to your other platform. That's something I'm going to be interested to see if Amazon or Apple TV or whoever is one of the partners.
Bob, this is a random question that popped into my mind. For the last 20 years or so, the SEC has been the king of college football. And, had they not had multiple teams winning national titles during that stretch, then they're obviously not viewed the same way they are now. But they did. It was terrific timing along with the marketing. But, I don't know, and I'm sure I could probably go find 1990s TV ratings and whatnot. But in terms of just the sports business and TV, when did the SEC become this juggernaut, and kind of how? Were they always so heavily watched, or was there something else to it, back in the early 2000s?
No, it was really, kind of around when the BCS started going, and they had a good run in that. And that's kind of, to me, when they really got their legs. I think, a lot of, if you went back in mid 80s, it was kind of just like a regional conference.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, they had their, they had games and on CBS and had for years. But it really has grown. I think part of it was the association with ESPN to the length that they went. And then they've just performed. I mean, it is a religion down there, and it's got great following, and the teams have performed very well. There's always seems to be, Florida had some good runs, LSU had some runs,
yep.
Alabama's been in and out, Georgia. It seems like there's always a couple of the schools in the SEC that are just slightly better than everyone else, and I think that prolonged, height of performance is what's helped them the most.
Texas won in 05, they had a team set up in 09. Oklahoma's been a part of that championship or semifinals as well. How much would it have helped the Big 12 overall in all of this information had those two not just been close but actually captured an extra national championship or two? Would that have strengthened the Big 12 in any way?
Oh, absolutely. I think, it was, I was at that Texas USC game, still one of the best games I've ever been at. Mm. But absolutely, those things help. I mean, that's a glow that you kind of can bask in for a while. I mean, not forever, but certainly for a while. And I think that certainly would have helped. But I also think, I think the Big 12 is going to be just fine without Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, it's, at first it's just like the Pac-12 losing USC and UCLA. I mean, it's a punch to the gut. But I also think for a variety of reasons, it's probably a fair number of schools in the Big 12 who aren't too sad to see them go, based on some of my dealings. So, I think that winning always helps, and winning provides a glow, just not for that individual school, but for the conference as well. So, yeah, from that standpoint, Craig, I think you're right. I mean, it certainly would help.
Bob, does the economy affect TV deal contracts?
Yeah, a little bit. I never got too hyped up about it. I mean, I went through the 08, 09 kind of financial crisis and some other stuff in the 90s. You have some, you take a little sharper look at everything. But, at the end of the day, you're running a sports network, you got to have some games. And so you're going to do what it takes. And sometimes what happens is it's stuff other than the marquee stuff. So, you keep your crown jewels, but, some of your less sparkly jewels might get thrown along the wayside. And a little bit of the rich get richer and the poor get nothing. So that's the most likely thing to happen. I think that, everyone's looking at the ad markets and how that's going to work and the issues with the cord cutting and the cable bundle, stuff like that. But, at the end of the day, sports still draws, live sports and news are the two biggest draws for television. And so from that standpoint, it's going to be somewhat recession proof, although they're going to be taking a hard look at things.
Soon after USC-UCLA, the Big 12 commissioner change was announced as well. You came on with us. That's when we got to know you, and I watched you on social media interacting to try to bring insight, and you were. In the end, have you heard much from the business or inside the business on what people have thought about Brett for the last month or two?
A few things. I mean, a couple people have said, he's still Brett. and that, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, you're not going to change the DNA of the guy. And he's been a salesman and it can, he didn't come out of finance, I guarantee you that. But he's a very smart guy, and he's always, moving forward. And I think that kind of energy can be very infectious. And I think, I don't think it's a bad thing for the Big 12. I'm not saying that, it was quiet and laid back and all those type of things, but, with Bob or with BB or even with Weiberg. But I think it's certainly a change from your typical collegiate commissioner or conference commissioner. And I think in this day and age, it's with what's going on and the changes that the business of collegiate sports is going through, and don't mistake me when I say that. It is a business, especially at the conference level. I mean, those guys are out there to generate revenue. So I think having an individual like Brett and moving them forward is a good thing. Yeah,
and I think the conference needed somebody to go fight for him. Not that Bob Bowlesby wasn't doing that, but it did seem like it was more reactive than proactive, and I think that's where they have it right now with Brett. Bob, as always, you've given us an incredible amount of time. I'm glad you had a fantastic trip, and jealous as hell, by the way, but glad you're back, and thank you very much, and we'll be in touch.
All right, you guys take care. Good to talk with you.
You too. Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports executive, also Robert Thompson Sports, and he's a consultant, and he just gives us insight. We appreciate his time.
Yeah, I'm glad that I thought